around it for the analysis of their portfolio of clients and how that has really now transformed and converted them into a BI believer and their plans for the future. So let me hand over to Tony.
So, just for full disclosure, I wasn't really scheduled to be here, and I found out like Tuesday night that I was going to come in. So my colleague was supposed to come in and tell you all about this. So at my company, as Paul said, we're true believers in the BI thing. We're just getting started though. We have myself and RJ, who was supposed to be here and will probably be at the next meeting. So RJ kind of is the business intelligence department at Store Capital. I work with the executive team. I get a lot of the ad hoc questions from the executive team, so I'm a little bit more on the Tableau side. It's a little bit more, I'll get a question like, okay, you know, by 2 o'clock we need to know how many outstanding commitments we have in the state of Florida or something like that. So I go into the data. I'm more the data guy. So I'm really starting to get Tableau for more than visualization. It's pretty interesting. First of all, it was really nice to watch people who know what the heck they're doing on these things. I really see them operate this machinery. It's pretty slick, and I think Roxanne, I liked your charts with the different colors on them. I was thinking that you could actually build that into Excel with a couple embedded if statements and pull that off too. I actually have a solution, but something I need to do with that at home. So that was pretty neat. So let me tell you sort of a little bit about Store and what our problems are. So Store Capital is a REIT. We are what's called a real estate investment trust. We invest in single-tenant retail properties. What I mean by that is we buy them, and then we collect rent. So we would buy something like a Burger King or Taco Bell or something, or maybe a daycare facility. And part of the process is the person who is actually already in there sells it to us and immediately signs a long-term lease. It's called a sale-leaseback. So most real estate most commercial real estate in this country is all done on sale-leaseback. All these buildings are probably owned by some company and collecting rent and all that kind of good stuff. So that's what we do. What I think makes us a little unique in the world of selling product and whatnot is that a lot of people, when they make the sale, it's sort of when they make their profit. So Amazon sells a tent to somebody on the internet. Maybe they have an hour or two to fulfill it, but they've created that profit and moved on. On the other hand, we don't make a profit unless that person pays the rent for 15 years. So we have a whole different way to look at the world. And to that end, we're trying to figure out how to monitor our portfolio. That's really what this all came down to. So we had an issue that happened last year where we invest in different restaurant concepts. You can imagine Burger King, Taco Bell. So we had one concept that was not doing too well, and we got kind of tripped up where people had trouble paying the rent. And kind of part of the postmortem was, why were we surprised by this? Because we actually collect a lot of financial data from our customers. So inside of our leases, every 90 days, every one of our customers has to send a full financial statement, not only on their company, but on all the properties that they own with us. And imagine it's a lot of data, right? It's ridiculous amounts of data. But the point is, we didn't really have a way to look at that data. So what happened is I came back and I said, yeah, we actually could have told you, we actually knew this a year ago had we been able to look at the data, because I did this big analysis looking at prior history. And they were like, well, why can't we look at our data? I said, well, there's a problem. I mean, we've got amazing data, but no way to really get at it. Which is, I said, and if you really want to do that, that's way beyond our capabilities here with the products that we have and the people, and there's Paul. As a matter of fact, Paul came to us from our external IT group that does some consulting with us, they had actually seen you speak many years ago, and maybe I held on to his card and said, call this guy and maybe they can give you a little bit of help there. So anyway, and hopefully next time when RJ comes, we'll have some demos to show. We got tripped up a little bit on that today. So let's talk about our data. So a lot of people, when you hear talk about data, they're like, oh, this can resolve 1 million records in 12 seconds. Our data is nowhere near that deep, as I would say. We have about 2,000 properties and about 400 clients. We don't have a lot of deep data. Now, on those things, we do have financial statements 4 times a year. So we probably have 40 or 50,000 financials in our database. So anything we're going to hit is never going to be more than like 50,000 records. So speed is not really our issue. But we also have data that's very wide. I would say we collect more data than almost anybody. So certainly more than any of our competitors. So I know on any particular moment, that particular Burger King, what are its sales, what are its profits, and the metrics we're tracking, just as people track the different metrics, we're tracking the ratio of the profits from that store to the amount of rent that they pay us. That's a ratio. We call that a fixed charge coverage. If that's north of 1.5, we're kind of happy. If that's starting to get towards 1, we're going to get a little frightened. If it's below 1, arguably they could close the store and actually make more money. If they're making less money than the rent. Right. So we like to keep our hands on that. So what we're trying to do is track all those coverages and see where things are headed and where our potential next problem is. And the problem that brought all this up was, yeah, we saw the coverages heading down, and we had the ability to look at that. The other thing that we have a lot of trouble with in our database is, I call it direction. And what I mean by that is, I can go in and get a snapshot. Here's this property, its coverage is 2. Here's this property, its coverage is 2. But when you look behind the data, hey, this coverage was 4 last year and is now 2. And last year, this one was 1 and is now 2. That's not created equal, even though they're equal numbers today. So we think that direction is a big deal for us. And we had no insight into direction. So when Paul and his team came out, we actually, our first proof of concept was really direction and trends, because that's something we could never do. So Tyler, who is probably in Australia somewhere right now, LA, whatever it is, you ever met Tyler? He came out and actually we sat down and we got in a room and pulled out some sheets and started mapping out some cool things to do. And the first thing we tried to do was figure out, how can we show where things are headed? And we spent a lot of time with that, because when we put a financial statement in, there's a lot of different flavors for us. Like we might put a projection, and then we might put a 3-month statement, but then we might create a 12-month statement all to prior. So you might have 3 statements in it for one particular day. So what was killing us was, you have to make a kind of a decision tree. Use this statement if it's in there, and if it's not, then go to this one. So when we finally got it done, it was like 18 steps just to figure out what statement to pull on a particular day. But the nice thing about that is now it's all built into the SQL Data Mart, and you hit a button, and you know that you see that statement in there. That's the one that you were supposed to pick. And then we start comparing that year over year, let's say, and now I can actually see the trend. And built this amazing dashboard, and we'll show that next time, that I can go in and by industry, I can say look at restaurants or look at daycare and start seeing where things are headed. Because that's a really good thing for us. Because remember, we're also doing about $1 billion of new purchases every year in all these industries. So if I can figure out that daycare is going downhill, I may not do any more daycare. I may put that on hold. I may say I'm only going to do really good stuff. So there's a lot that we can do with this data, not just from watching the portfolio, but also from helping us make our portfolio better going forward. Right? So this is like a big deal for us. We have about $7 billion in properties in our portfolio, and we're adding $1 billion, $1.5 billion every year. So making better decisions up front is another reason for this. What our end game is I'm trying to figure out how to deliver this to the executive team who kind of live, if you will. I would like my CEO to be able to pick up his phone and see some cool report or something, or be able to run it live. But I think it'd be better, we'd probably create a report form and send out. Here is the state of the portfolio today, and here's what you maybe should be focused on or not focused on. And when we get together in a meeting, let's have a discussion about these data points. Okay. So some of the cool things that we've done with it. One of the first things we put it to use for was the hurricane that came through. I don't know. A hurricane hit the Carolinas, maybe October, November, whenever that happened. So what was pretty interesting is that we had geocoded every one of our properties, and we know if that property has flood insurance or not. That's a data point. So we actually kind of we kind of jammed it into the data mart by ourselves, and then we put it up into Tableau. And you can go into Tableau and pull some really neat layers out. Anybody uses Tableau? Like you can actually put the weather on your map, which is kind of cool. But we were able to sort of get our hands on floodplains. And what was really neat is to be able to put the floodplains over the map and put our properties in and code our properties, whether we had insurance or not, and then see where we were going to have a potential issue. And fortunately, we had some stuff that was not in floodplains that ended up flooding. I mean, they had it, because the floodplains are ranked like 10-year, 50-year, 100-year, 500-year. Well, they had like a 500-year flood, so even like a place like here might have flooded, and we're probably not in the floodplain. But it was really good to be able to run a list and go to the board of directors and say, hey, our exposure is only 3% of our portfolio, even if every one of these properties went underwater. And by the way, we have insurance on X%. So that was a big smoking deal. We've used it actually 3 times. There was a hurricane in Houston, Carolinas, there was one other one, I forget where we're running. But you can see that could be pretty useful for earthquakes, right? Snowstorms. We get a lot of people that call up and say, man, it's 30 below zero, and nobody wants to run out and get a roast beef sandwich, or something. So you'd be surprised how the weather could even affect what we do. I mean, we're out collecting rent from all 50 states, and we're in gyms and movie theaters and stuff. So we really are trying to watch everything at the same time. And we see different trends geographically, we see different trends by property type. For instance, movie theaters in January, movie theater had the worst January in 10 years. Because if you're in a movie theater business, it's not like selling hamburgers, right? Your product it's not in your control. Hollywood sends you a bunch of crap and nobody will come to see it. That's not the same as selling a taco, right? So, and then other things, if you're in the gym business, gyms are a whole different animal. Like gyms, once they ramp up, they tend to just keep going because people just keep the memberships and they never show up and stuff. So we like them. We like gyms quite a bit. So. So the flood overlay was pretty cool. We made a map of the country where we had a dot of every one of our properties, and the size of the dot was the amount of the investment. So that was kind of neat. And then the color of the dot was the sales trends for that particular property. That was extremely tough. As soon as you put it up and visualize it, you start seeing stuff you never thought. You could never tell by looking at the spreadsheet that what the heck's happening in Maine or why, And we could actually switch the colors based on a lot of stuff, square footage of the building, coverage of the thing, how much debt the parent company has. What we're tracking is how much debt people have. And if we start seeing people that are with debt creeping up, that would be concerning for us, right? Because they've got to service that debt. So this is all the kind of stuff that we are attempting to do. And Tableau has kind of been our choice. We have a really cool cockpit in the business objects world that is more the trend of the sales and coverages and how the companies are doing. Tableau, though, gives you a little bit more visualization on, where you can graph X and Y axis is a little bit different. We were talking about how a 2 coverage for 2 different properties is maybe not equal depending on things. So we have one where we wrap the coverages versus growth rate and put them on a map. And then we figured out how to DAG, and we changed everything from red to green. Because things that had low coverage or bad direction or are going to be red was actually pretty telling when you could kind of see everything down in the bottom, the lower left was bad coverage and bad direction. And then you're like, okay, this guy here's got that 2 coverage, but he's headed up, and this one's. So they actually ended up in different spots on that graph. And all of a sudden, it wasn't just who's got a 2-to-1 coverage. It's who's actually inside this line. And that was extremely helpful for us. You can imagine, we are, I would say, scratching the tip of the iceberg. And Tableau is kind of where I've been trying to get good at. If anybody ever used Tableau in here at all? Tableau is one of those programs that in 60 seconds you can do the most amazing thing ever. Like, I cannot believe I just did that. But then you try to do something super easy, and RJ and I will be like 2 hours watching YouTube videos. How do you turn that button off? I don't know if you guys are, it's infuriating how it doesn't do. Then, like you said, you can hit a button and like, I just made this amazing map. So we're trying to get better at that. It's true, right? Actually, if you go to the conference in California, the guy who teaches the Tableau training is like a genius. Is Adams, yeah, he's the vegan bodybuilder guy, whatever. Yeah, you can look him up. But man, is he good at Tableau. He was doing stuff that I didn't know that you could do in there. I mean, I had never seen stuff like that. It's like, I looked at this, and he's just, it's like, okay, I just need to videotape him doing it. But he actually puts himself, he puts videotapes up on the internet. He does. With all his tips and tools, so I would recommend doing that. So anyways, that's what we're doing. So our goal for us is to watch our basket of investments, because like I said, I got a 15-year time horizon, and a lot can happen. Like, we do a lot of diligence up front to make sure we think that this person has viability. But 3 years later, it's roll the dice, right? So we want to make sure, and what we can do on our side is, I put some interesting things like, had we known that this operator had trouble the year before, we can go sell those properties and make it somebody else's property. Who maybe wants the property and wants to kick the guy out anyway. Like, people buy things for different reasons. But the point is, the faster we can find out about it, the more we can be proactive, and it can save us a lot of money. If I get stuck with, an Applebee's goes sideways, I've got a $3 million box sitting there. That buys a lot of business intelligence, and that's just one property out of